Hello friends, I am Dr. Maninder Singh from Department of Computer Science, Punjabi University, Patiala. Today's lecture is on congestion control. In this lecture, we will discuss how congestion occurs in our networks and different congestion control mechanisms that are used to avoid or prevent congestion. Let us start. We will start this lecture by first explaining how congestion occurs in our networks. Congestion occurs when the number of packets transmitted through the network reaches close to the packet handling capacity of the network or routers. In this condition, various routers can drop some of the packets. However, as more and more packets are dropped, the situation may turn into worse because due to the error control mechanisms at the upper layers, the sender may send duplicates of the dropped packets. If the congestion continues even further, sometimes a situation may arrive that the entire system collapses and no packet is delivered. The various causes of congestion in a subnet are: the rate of incoming rate exceeds the capacity of the output lines. If unexpectedly a stream of incoming packets starts arriving on multiple input lines and all require the same output line, in this case, a queue will be formed. If the memory is not sufficient enough to hold all the packets will be lost, and increasing the memory size is not going to solve the problem at all. This is because before the packet reaches front of the queue, they have already timed out due to waiting long in the queue. When timer times out, the sender retransmits duplicate packet that are also added to the queue. Therefore, some packets are added again and again to the queue, thereby increasing the load all the way to the destination. The speed of routers is very slow to perform bookkeeping tasks like queuing buffers, updating tables, etc. The router's buffer is very limited. Sometimes congestion in a subnet occurs if the speed of the processor is slow. This is because the slow speed CPU at router side will carry out the routine tasks, for example, queuing buffers, updating tables, is very slow. As a result of this, queues are formed even if there is a surplus line capacity. Congestion may also occur due to the presence of slow links. This problem will only be solved if high speed links are used in the network. But sometimes increase in the link bandwidth can worsen the congestion problem even further, as higher speed links may possibly make the network more unbalanced. Congestion can become worse if a route does not have free buffers. Then it starts discarding the newly arriving packets. When the newly arriving packets are discarded, the sender may retransmit them after the timer times out. Such packets are retransmitted again and again by the sender until the sender gets the acknowledgement of these packets. Therefore, multiple transmissions of same packets will force the congestion to occur at the sending end. Next is, what is congestion control? Congestion control refers to the mechanisms and techniques that can either control or prevent congestion. All the congestion control strategies are divided into two categories, that is open loop congestion control and closed loop congestion control. In open loop congestion control, different policies are used to prevent the congestion before it happens. In these mechanisms, congestion control is handled either by the source or by the destination. Next, we are going to discuss about different policies that can prevent congestion. First policy is retransmission policy. Retransmissions sometimes is unavoidable. If the sender feels that a transmitted packet is corrupted or lost, then the packet has to be retransmitted. Retransmission of packets may increase congestion in the network. On the other hand, a good retransmission policy can prevent the congestion. The retransmission policy and timers should be designed in such a way in order to optimize efficiency, and the same time it should prevent congestion. For example, the retransmission policy used by TCP is designed to prevent congestion. Second policy is window policy. The type of window present at the sender side can also affect congestion. For congestion control, the selective repeat window is better than go back N window. In the go back N window, when the timer of a packet expires, several packets can be retransmitted, even though some of the packets may have arrived safe and sound at the receiver. Therefore, the duplication of packets may make the congestion even worse. On the other hand, the selective repeat window policy may try to retransmit the specific packets that have been lost or corrupted. The third policy is acknowledgement policy. The acknowledgement policy forced by the receiver can also affect congestion. If the receiver fails to acknowledge every packet it receives, it can slow down the sender, and this helps in preventing the congestion. A number of approaches are used in this case. A receiver can send an acknowledgement to the sender only if it has a packet to be sent or a specific timer times out. A receiver may decide to acknowledge only n packets at a time. We need to know that the acknowledgements are also part of the load in a network. Sending fewer acknowledgements means imposing less load on the network. Fourth policy is discarding policy. An excellent discard policy used by the routers can prevent congestion and at the same time may not damage the integrity of the transmission. For example, in audio transmissions, if the policy is to discard less sensitive packets when congestion is likely to happen, the quality of the sound is still preserved and congestion is prevented or alleviated. Last policy is admission policy. A good admission policy may also prevent congestion in virtual circuit networks. Switches present in the virtual circuit first check the resource requirement before admitting flow in the network. A router can also refuse establishing a new virtual circuit connection if there is a congestion present in the network or if there is a likelihood of future congestion. Next congestion control scheme is closed loop congestion control. Closed loop congestion control mechanisms try to reduce congestion after it happens in the network. Several mechanisms have been used by various protocols, and I am going to explain few of them here. First is back pressure. When there is a congestion on a particular router, then it can report about it to the previous upstream router to decrease the rate of outgoing packets. The action can be recursive all the way to the router before the source. This mechanism is called back pressure. Second mechanism is choke point. In choke packet method, congested node sends a information packet directly to the source station, that is, intermediary nodes through which the packet has traveled are not informed. This type of control is similar to ICMP's source quench packet. Third is implicit signaling. The source predicts that a congestion has occurred somewhere in the network when it fails to receive any acknowledgement of the transmitted packets. Therefore, the delay in receiving acknowledgements can be a signal that there is a congestion in the network and the source slows down the transmission. This policy is used in TCP. Next is explicit signaling. In this method, the congested nodes can send an explicit signal to the source or destination informing about the congestion. Explicit signaling is very different from choke packet method because In choke packet method, a separate packet is used for this purpose, that is to carry information about the congestion, whereas in explicit signaling method, the information is incorporated in the packets that carry data. Explicit signaling is of two types, backward signaling and forward signaling. In backward signaling, a bit can be set in the packet which is moving in the direction opposite to the congestion. This bit can inform the source that there is a congestion and it should slow down in order to avoid the discarding of packets. In forward signaling, a bit can be set in a packet which is moving in the direction of the congestion. This bit can inform the destination that congestion has occurred. The receiver can then use different policies, for example, slowing down the acknowledgements in order to reduce the congestion. Next, we are going to discuss open loop based congestion control algorithms. The first method is traffic shaping. Traffic shaping is a method that is used to control the rate and amount of traffic sent to the network. The two techniques that can be used to shape traffic are leaky bucket and token bucket. Let us start with the leaky bucket first. If there is a small hole at the bottom of a bucket, the water leaks from the bucket at a constant rate, so long as there is a water present in the bucket. The rate at which the water leaks from the bucket does not depend on the rate at which the water is input to the bucket, except the bucket is empty. The input rate may vary, but the output rate will always remain constant. In the same way, in the field of networking, a technique called leaky bucket can be used to smooth out bursty traffic. Bursty chunks are stored in the bucket and sent out at a constant rate. Figure here shows a leaky bucket and its effects. In the figure, we assume that the network has committed a bandwidth of 3 Mbps for a host. The use of the leaky bucket shapes the input traffic to make it conform to this commitment. In figure, the host sends a burst of data at a rate of 12 Mbps for 2 seconds for a total of 24 megabits of data. The host is silent for 5 seconds and then sends data at a rate of 2 Mbps for 3 seconds for a total of 6 megabits of data. In all, the host can send 30 megabits of data in 10 seconds. The leaky bucket smooths the traffic by sending out data at a rate of 3 Mbps during the same 10 seconds. Without the leaky bucket, the beginning burst may have hurt the network by consuming more bandwidth than is set aside for this host. We can also see that the leaky bucket may prevent congestion. As an analogy, consider the freeway during rush hour busy traffic. If instead commuters could stagger their working hours, congestion on our freeways could be avoided. A simple leaky bucket implementation is shown in the figure here. A FIFO queue holds the packets. If the traffic consists of fixed size packets, for example cells in ATM networks, the process removes a fixed number of packets from the queue at each tick of the clock. If the traffic consists of variable length packets, the fixed output rate must be based on the number of bytes or bits. The following is an algorithm for variable length packets. Step 1 is to initialize a counter to n at the tick of the clock. Step 2 is, if n is greater than the size of packet, send the packet and decrement the counter by the packet size. Then repeat this step until n is smaller than the packet size. Step 3 is reset the counter and go to step 1. Second traffic shaping policy is token bucket. The leaky bucket is very restrictive. It does not credit an idle host. For example, if a host is not sending for a while, its bucket becomes empty. If the host has bursty data, the leaky bucket allows only an average rate. The time when the host was idle is not taken into account. On the other hand, the token bucket algorithm allows idle hosts to accumulate credit for the future in the form of tokens. For each tick of the clock, the system sends n tokens to the bucket. The system removes one token for every cell or byte of data sent. For example, if n is 100 and the host is idle for 100 ticks, the bucket collects 10,000 tokens. Now, the host can consume all these tokens in one tick with 10,000 cells, or the host takes 1000 ticks with 10 cells per tick. In other words, the host can send bursty data as long as the bucket is not empty. Figure shows the idea here. The token bucket can easily be implemented with a counter. The token is initialized to 0. Each time a token is added, the counter is incremented by 1. Each time a unit of data is sent, the counter is decremented by 1. When the counter is 0, the host cannot send data. The two techniques, leaky and token bucket, can be combined to credit the host, which is idle host, and at the same time regulating the flow of traffic. The leaky bucket should be applied after the token bucket, and the rate of the leaky bucket should be higher than the rate at which the tokens are dropped in the bucket. Open loop congestion control based algorithm is resource reservation. A flow of data needs resources such as buffer, bandwidth, CPU time, and so on. The quality of service is improved if these resources are reserved beforehand. We discuss in this section one QoS model called integrated services, which depends heavily on resource reservation to improve the quality of service. Next algorithm is admission control. Admission control refers to the mechanism used by routers or a switch to accept or reject a flow based on predefined parameters called flow specifications. Before a router accepts a flow for processing, it checks the flow specifications to see if its capacity in terms of bandwidth, buffer size, CPU speed, etc., and its previous commitments to other flows can handle the new flow. Next is congestion control in virtual circuits. Admission control is one such closed loop technique in which action is taken when congestion is detected in the network. Different approaches that are used in the admission control are simpler one, where no new connections are set up when the congestion is signaled. This type of approach is normally used in telephone networks. When the exchange gets overloaded, then no new calls are established. And in the second approach, new virtual connections are allowed. Both route these virtual connections carefully so that none of the congested router becomes part of this route. Next technique is choke packet technique. Choke packet is a closed loop technique. In this, each router present in the network monitor its resources and the utilization at each of its output line. There is a threshold set by the administrator, and when any of the resource utilization crosses this threshold, then action is taken to bring down this. For example, when source P receives a choke packet with destination Q, it will bring down the traffic to destination Q by 50%, and if again after some interval of time it again receives a choke packet for the same destination, it will further bring down the traffic by 25% more, and so on. Figure here shows the functioning of choke packets in A, heavy traffic between nodes P and Q. In B, node Q sends the choke packet to P. In C, choke packet reaches P. In D, P reduces the flow and sends a reduced flow out, and in E, reduced flow reaches Q. Next closed loop technique is hop by hop choke packets. This technique is an improvement over choked packet technique. At high speed over long distances, sending a choke packet back to the source is not going to help a lot, because by the time a choke packet reaches the source, already a lot of packets which are heading to the same original destination would be out for the source. So, to help this, hop by hop choke packets are used. In this technique, the choke packet affects each and every intermediary router through which it passes by. Here, when the choke packet reaches a router back to its path to the source, it brings down the traffic between these intermediate routers. In this scenario, intermediate routers must allocate extra buffer space for the incoming traffic, as the outflow through that router will be brought down immediately when the choke packet arrives. But the flow of input traffic will only be brought down when choke packet reaches the node which is before it in the original path. Figure here shows the functioning of hop by hop choke packets. In A, heavy traffic between nodes P and Q. In B, node Q sends the choke packet to P. In C, choke packet reaches R, and the flow between R and Q is curtailed down. Choke packet reaches P, and P reduces the flow out. Another closed loop technique is load shedding. Load shedding is one of the simplest and more effective techniques. In this technique, whenever a router finds congestion in the network, it starts dropping out the packets immediately. There are different methods by which a host can find out which packets to drop. Simplest way can be just choose the packets randomly which has to be dropped. More effective ways are there, but they require some kind of cooperation from the sender too. For many applications, some packets are more important than others. So, sender can mark the packets in priority classes to indicate how important they are. If such a priority policy is implemented, then intermediate nodes can drop packets from the lower priority classes and use the available bandwidth for the more important packets. Another technique to avoid congestion is slow start, a proactive technique. This is one of the proactive techniques which is used to avoid congestion. In the original implementation of TCP, as soon as a connection was established between two devices, they could each go hog wild, sending segments as fast as they liked, as long as there was a room in the other device's receive window. In a busy internet, the sudden appearance of a large amount of new traffic could aggravate any existing congestion. Each sender is at first restricted to sending only an amount of data equal to one full sized segment, that is equal to the MSS, which is maximum segment size value for the connection. Each time an acknowledgement is received, the amount of data the device can send is increased by the size of another full sized segment. Thus, the device starts slow in terms of how much data it can send, with the amount it sends increasing until either the full window size is reached or congestion is detected on the link. So, friends, this was all about congestion control. Hope all the concepts are clear to you. Hope to see you in the next lecture. Till then, goodbye. Thank you.